Shooter.
Welcome, fools, to episode 44 of the Fantasy Fools podcast. And that is also happy election day this week for all of you fools out there. And you know what? I think an even happier week 9 as we're going to dive into just how the NFL handled week 9 football. A lot of good stuff. More injuries, obviously, that are going to affect us all, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But Jordan, why don't you kick us off with some news?
Man, we've got a lot of good, interesting, fun things to talk about this week. Let's start it off with a fun one. Puka got ejected for throwing a punch, which was nuts.
I was so pissed.
Man, I'm sure plenty of people were pissed. I was playing against him, so I was so happy. Still lost, unfortunately. But neither here nor there. Puka was ejected. I think he comes back this week. He'll probably just get a fine.
It wasn't ejected for a long term. It was just a one-game thing.
Yeah, it's just you're out this game, which is normal sports rules. But number 2, we got the Saints with the second head coach firing of the season.
Yeah,
he's only the second. I do think there'll be a couple more, but Dennis Allen out of New Orleans. He's gone.
Yeah, let's see what this means for the Saints team, because they're going to be under new leadership. I think they had a problem, and it's just going to be interesting to see. Hey, from a fantasy perspective, hopefully this interim coach can really get this offense going. They haven't been going at all since week 2. They stalled.
Yeah, a little weird too, because Derek Carr's hurt and he's just coming back. So you would have thought that would have bid him a little bit of time before they fired him, but man. Right as his starting quarterback comes back, they're like, nope, you're done.
Yep.
Next, we got the Bengals. They sent a 7th-round pick for Khalil Herbert. I don't know if this is a sign of them expecting Zach Moss to be out a little longer than expected, or they just want to make sure they have depth.
He's out for the season.
News update. He's out for the season.
Really?
Yep, he's
okay.
done with a neck injury.
Dang.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chase Brown owners, like myself, are very happy. Next, we got the Raiders shaking up the offensive coaching staff. And what I kind of like about this is Antonio Pierce, the head coach of the Raiders, took full responsibility for this. He said this was 100% my decision, and he let go of offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, quarterback coach, and offensive line coach. So they're definitely changing things up there. Which is not surprising. Cowboys also made a trade. They got Jonathan Mingo, a 7th-round pick for 4th to Panthers. So
does this do anything for fantasy though? Are you looking at waivers for Mingo, or are we kind of over
not
him?
at all? Not at all.
No,
I think if you've got bench room, it'd be a good experiment. Maybe CD's week to week, but you know who the guys are. It's Jake Ferguson, it's CeeDee Lamb, and it's Jalen Tolbert or Brandon Cooks, depending on when he comes back.
If Dak Prescott was healthy, and we'll get into injuries a little bit later,
right.
But if Dak Prescott was healthy, I would be a little bit more intrigued as a bench piece. But right now, with him out of it, and then you need if you are picking up Mingo, you need to win now. So you're not taking those flyers.
Right.
You're probably trying to trade for a piece. You're probably trying to trade for a piece to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. I also this trade didn't make sense from a real football perspective. In my
this is Jerry Jones saying 2nd-round pick. I want to try and get somebody. I got to get some youth in here, and clearly my team is not where I need it to be.
He's just trying to give his fans some hope when there really is none this season.
Instead of signing all of these terribly old and overweight running backs that they're bringing in, why wouldn't they go out for a guy like Khalil Herbert, who proved last season that he can be the number 1 running back in an offense? Obviously now the Bears having changed their running back room, I just don't understand it.
I'm wondering if Khalil Herbert has some locker room issues. I don't understand. You're right. He's proven that he can play. And to get the Bengals to get somebody like him for a 7th-round pick, there's just so many parts.
He could have been a running threat for the Cowboys. The Cowboys have nothing. Who's scared of the Cowboys running backs? Absolutely no team.
I don't know.
Unless that's a strategy.
Man. But moving on, we got a few more trades to cover. The Lions made a trade with Aiden Hutchinson being hurt. They went and traded with the Browns for pass rushers Darius Smith. The Jets traded away Mike Williams to the Steelers. Now George Pickens finally has a reputable receiver on the other side of him. Jameson Williams, his suspension's complete. So you Lions fans or anybody who's got him in fantasy, that's exciting. He's coming back for week 10.
We're going to talk about him later on.
And then these are my two favorite pieces of news. Did you guys see DeAndre Hopkins' celebration dance as his first touchdown as a Chief?
I actually didn't.
He does the Remember the Titans dance from the movie.
God, I love that.
Just to troll the Titans. Like, amazing.
I love that.
It's fantastic. You should check it out. And then just a fantastic play by Saquon. On a run, he did a backwards leapfrog over somebody.
That was the nicest rush I've ever seen for only a 14-yard rush. Like, you're talking about a superstar player who literally, I think he actually went around a dude, then leaned into somebody else, spun around him, and then backwards leaped another guy and got another 4 yards out of it. It was the most disgusting run I've ever seen.
It was nuts. Yeah, he at 28 clearly still has all the juice.
It really shows how dumb the Giants really are. But I mean, that's just what it is.
But okay, in the Giants' defense, no matter how great Saquon played this season, it wasn't going to make Jones pass better.
Right.
Like
it was not.
It doesn't fix their problems. As great as Saquon is, he doesn't fix their problems.
I don't know if I fully agree with you on that, because look at what Jones is doing on it with his legs now that they actually do have another running back.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to see. I mean, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but let's go into injuries too. So thank you for summing up the news and reports here. But going into injuries, we got basically another one of Tyler's stars on his team. They are, of course, out for a while. I'm talking about Chris Olave, who, if you didn't see it, it's a scary clip. He had a bad concussion. Yeah, I mean, there's no way that's not a bad concussion. It was honestly, if it was college, I would say that's targeting. Like it was a bad hit right to the head. So I'm expecting him out week to week plus. Dak Prescott, we already talked about a little bit with a hamstring injury, and they did take a look and they said it may be worse than they considered. So he might be done for a little bit longer than week to week, but we're going to consider him week to week for now. CeeDee Lamb with a shoulder injury, he's going to be week to week, but there is news that he might still play through it, but I wouldn't expect as much. I wouldn't expect CeeDee numbers out of him. A.J. Brown, they're still figuring out. They did get some positive news with an MRI, but he had a knee injury. It sounds like it's not an ACL, so he might come back in a few weeks. But monitor his situation because that's going to affect Jalen Hurts, Devonta Smith, and some of your other guys in the Eagles uniforms. Drake London with a hip pointer. He's day-to-day. He came back into the game. He ended up scoring a touchdown. I mean, we'll get back to it, but he seems to be around, but he did take it easy after a bit. Xavier Legette, another one, hand injury. He's week to week. This one, unfortunately, is sad, though, going into the next player here. Eric All, rookie tight end for the Bengals. He is out with an ACL. Season is done, along with like what we already talked about, Zach Moss, neck injury. He is out for the season as well. Two other ones, not as big deal. Patrick Mahomes, it was very scary in Monday Night Football. Seemed to have a leg injury, but he kind of walked it off. So I don't know whether to call him a very fast healer or just a little wimp. Not really sure. And last but not least, Caleb Williams. Well, ankle injury. He's day-to-day, probably okay, but should just sit him anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually interesting that you bring up the Caleb Williams one because he did not do anything. He was so bad this past game, and it was against in Arizona. I mean, Arizona, I don't think they have the best. They're an average defense, but he just performed awful.
He did not look good, and it comes down to like what Caleb is it, right? We had a 3 or 4 week stretch where Caleb actually looked awesome in like, weeks 5 through 8, but now the past couple weeks he's been bad. I'm sorry, maybe it was like 5 through 7, but now the past couple weeks he's been bad. He started the season bad. He's a rookie. I'll give him that, but he's got a really talented roster. I'm very much questioning who's the real Caleb.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's tough to evaluate him right now.
He's a rookie. You got to give him time, but it's just something to monitor as time goes on.
But yeah.
All right, and just to end that off, we do have some notable returns. We do had T.J. Hawkinson come back and Travis Etienne. Both didn't really do anything much from a fantasy perspective, but glad to have them back. And Puka was injured. Puka was back. Puka was ejected. Puka was back. Puka's just, who knows what Puka you're getting. He's every other day. He's got a different Puka.
I know this as a Puka guy who owned him and then traded him away and then traded back for him in a different league. I sat him when he did well, and then I played him when he decided to punch the guys. So I'm kind of pissed right now at him.
Yeah, kind of hurt you this week, but I think next week he'll come right back. But that is our news and views around the league going into our week 9 trifecta. Starting off with my surprise of the week, I had Alvin Kamara. He is this New Orleans offense. He is the only one who can do anything. 29 carries for 155 yards. That's 5.34 yards per carry. He absolutely dominated. I think in just rushing alone, he had like 26 points in my league. And I don't even have, I forgot to include even where he was on the ground. Through the air. Pulling that up right now. He had 9 targets, 6 receptions, 60 yards, no touchdowns on either end of the game, but he didn't need a touchdown that week.
He doesn't need it. I mean, he's a superstar. And honestly, I almost find it unfair for you to put him in your surprise because it's Alvin freaking Kamara. He's just doing this every week. He's the only one who I could say is probably the RB1 more than like 3 times, or at least RB3.
He's been down over the past 4 weeks. Week 5, 10.6, 15, 7, 5, 8, 16. I mean, this is the reason why it's surprising is because this is him getting back into high 20s or above points every single week, kind of where he should be. Granted, it's going to be great with a new offensive head coach.
And I'll say this, though. Look at who he was down for, right? He was playing against Kansas City, playing against Tampa Bay, playing against Denver, and playing against Chargers. I would put all of them as a top 8 defense. I mean, he had a very tough stretch, and he kind of survived it. So
yeah, exactly.
I think he's very good things are looking ahead for Alvin Kamara. But moving on to someone who I was blown away at his performance, especially when I saw the stat line. And I'm going to say the stat line first, and you're going to basically say, who is he talking about, right? Jamar Chase? CeeDee Lamb? No. 7 receptions, 13 targets, 180 yards, and 2 touchdowns for 34.1 fantasy points, right? Oh, wait, no. It's got to be Nico Collins, right? No, he's still on IR. I'm talking about Jackson Smith-Njigba of Seattle. I mean, the dude balled out, and this performance literally rocketed him up the boards to wide receiver 13 on the season. He was wide receiver 1 for week 9. Dominated. But here's my question. Do you think he's going to keep it? Do you think he's going to sustain this?
Well, you got to look at his history, too, because he's had average weeks, right? Like, yes, he's number 13, but DK's out. You've got Tyler Lockett going off with him. You really don't have anyone else because it's just him and Tyler Lockett. Kenneth Walker obviously on the ground. I think he's entering flex territory in my eyes. He does have a tough defensive matchup going up against San Francisco, week 11, the Jets 13, Arizona twice, and the Packers. So I'm not super excited about his upcoming schedule. I don't think he's going to keep it up. That's my opinion.
I don't even look at his schedule. Yeah, I don't look at his schedule. I just look at what he's done. This is his second game on over 100 yards. Outside of that, he's never topped over 70. And this is the most receptions he's had outside of 2 other weeks. The ball lined up, right? This is with Metcalf out. I don't believe it.
Yeah, it's it's nice while it lasts, but it's not like he's just not sustainable starter. Don't expect this from him week to week.
Oh no, I'm saying I don't think he's a starter.
The only saving grace I will say is
Geno on the bench. Not even
as
a
flex category max.
I would say though, his redeeming quality is Geno Smith is behind the helm, and Geno Smith is currently the leader for passing yards right now in the league. He loves to throw the ball. I think I'm with Mike. He's a flex.
That's fair. My surprise of the week was Chase Brown. I think a lot of people expected him to have, at least double digits points with Zach Moss out. I did not expect him to have a top 5 week. Really excites me moving forward. He was awesome. And Zach Moss is permanently out. So this may be kind of the opposite. It might be a sign of things to come.
You look at Chase Brown's talent last year, right, when he was a rookie, and all of a sudden it's like, damn, that guy can move, right? But then all of a sudden they go out, they sign Zach Moss, and it's like, okay, interesting. He's a good signing. He's clearly the RB1 that they were talking about all through camp. But you always knew Chase Brown had talent, right? And now to see him like be utilized this way, and to see Zach Moss go down with an injury for the rest of the season, it's like, yeah, Chase Brown is going to be the dude.
Yeah. Moving on to consistence of the week. Starting off, I have Cedric Tillman, and you're probably scratching your head like, is Cedric Tillman really consistent? Well, this week he was 6 for 11 with 75 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. But since week 7, when you actually got I think it was his first pass. He had 5 targets for the entire weeks up until week 7. Ever since week 7, he's had 14.1 points, 25.4, 16.5. He's averaging 10.7 targets per game over the past 3 weeks. I think this is going to continue. I love seeing a new guy, a waiver wire guy, coming out and proving he's the number 1 wide receiver, especially with Jerry Jeudy out there, who's everyone had hopes for early on in his career.
I had high hopes for Tillman the second he actually was drafted. I really liked the placement. Granted, the QB change was necessary, but the QB change has really done wonders for him, and especially the loss of Cooper. I think it's going to follow as well. I think it's going to continue. Someone else who I also predicted to continue. This is because of injury, but this guy was signed to the Chiefs. Kareem Hunt has just balled out. Ever since showing up, he's gotten touchdowns in every game except for one, and that one was when he was first brought in here. And he still had 106 yards and a touchdown this past week. He's been Mr. Consistent. He's right around that RB top 20. Not necessarily blowing anything up, but he's been top 10 3 times in the 5 weeks he's been here. So he's just been great.
Man, my consistent of the week, I went with someone who I pretty much think he's the most consistent in the game, Justin Jefferson. It seems to not matter who's throwing him the ball. He just does his thing. He has been awesome every week. Hasn't really had a dud of a week. He had 7 catches, 137 yards. Didn't find the end zone, but still, put up a ton of points. 5 first downs. He even made a pass for 22 yards.
Yeah, there's not much to say about Justin Jefferson. He's just the best.
Yep. Moving on to Fools of the Week. And I'm going to probably catch you a little off guard with this, but my Fool of the Week... You
caught me off guard on this one.
Yeah, it was C.J. Stroud, 11 for 30. That's a less than 50% completion rate. Now, he had 191 passing yards, 0 passing touchdowns. He was 8 for 59 on the ground. The reason why he's the Fool of the Week is I know he's got some key players down, but I really expect more from him, especially with guys like Joe Mixon, Tank Dell. Yes, you've got Xavier Hutchinson and Robert Woods, who he's also passing to, but Dalton Schultz is a proven great receiving tight end. He only had 3 completions with 6 attempts. It was just a really disappointing week for CJ Stroud. And honestly, it's been a disappointing season. Number 17 ranking on the QB this season. He really has not been the quarterback that you drafted where you drafted him.
Yeah, this is really sad. And again, this blows my mind seeing him have 8 rushes and 59 yards on the ground. I want to actually look at the 11 for 30, and I think you're talking about Anthony Richardson over here. I mean, this is actually atrocious.
Yep.
You love to hate on Anthony Richardson.
It's just he's so easy to hate on. He's not an NFL quarterback. I'm disappointed. I love CJ Stroud. I don't want to see him go down this path. He does have a lot of injuries to his team, but I do expect bigger things and better things to come, especially with Nico Collins around the corner. Someone who I am losing a little bit of confidence in. I still like him in my dynasty, but I'm definitely losing a little bit of faith in him is Sam Laporta. I really thought he was primed for another big week with Jameson Williams out again, serving a second game of suspension, and all he benefited was 2 receptions on 3 targets and 28 yards. That is not acceptable for Sam Laporta. That's just straight up.
Yeah, this is going to be tough.
Great.
No, because they don't even have a super difficult schedule coming up. I mean, you got a Houston game this week, which you could see them it could be a shootout, so you could see them being utilized more. Jacksonville, Indiana, both going to be duds. Chicago, I can see some usage, but you're right. He's starting to waver as that tight end 2 that we predicted on the season, or tight end 3, whichever one it was.
Yeah, tight end 29 right this week, so...
I don't think anyone saw this coming, and it's not great news that Jameson Williams is coming back because he might be even less involved in the passing game. But moving on to my bust of the week, or fool of the week, sorry.
Thank you.
I went with Michael Pittman Jr. Mostly because this is a week where he should have shined. He should have been excited to have someone who can throw the ball with some decency.
Not Anthony Richardson.
Yeah. With Joe Flacco coming in and captaining the ship, you expected better things from Michael Pittman Jr. Especially because he's supposed to be their number one guy. But he had caught 1 of 4 targets for 14 yards. Not good.
I think for this one, I think the entire Colts offense were fools for the week. No one did anything. And they've got it. Brian Flores runs a pretty good defense, but not like this. It was messy.
Yeah. It's a tough one. I don't think this is going to be the Colts going forward. It is disappointing that Michael Pittman is honestly already the wide receiver 2, and quite frankly, Josh Downs has just looked better, and they just paid Michael Pittman. Paid him.
Do you guys think this is a sign of things to come?
Too early to tell.
No, I don't. I think there's bigger and brighter days ahead for Michael Pittman Jr. and Josh Downs.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, end us out with our only honorable mention this week.
Okay, I tried keeping the honorable mentions low because, I was told not to do them anymore. But I loved talking and seeing about DeAndre Hopkins. Okay, gladly. DeAndre Hopkins balled out on his new team.
Sarcasm.
Now, he ended up having 8 receptions on 9 targets, 86 yards, and 1 touchdown, 25.2 fantasy points, wide receiver 4 on the week. And it made Patrick Mahomes look good too. Like, not this. No one's saying Patrick Mahomes isn't good, but like for fantasy, he hasn't been. And he was QB4. I mean, honestly, he looked exactly like what they were missing when they lost Rashee Rice. He basically stepped right in, filled that role perfectly. And I think this is going to be something that's going to be a lock it in before your trade deadlines. Go get DeAndre Hopkins if you are a playoff contender, because he is going to make a difference.
Yep. That was our Week 9 trifecta. Moving on, we want to talk a little bit about our Week 9 highs and lows by matchup. Starting out, we had Thursday Night Football, the Houston Texans versus the New York Jets. We talked about C.J. Stroud a little bit, and we dove a little bit in this game. But on the high perspective from fantasies, you had Rodgers, you had Wilson, Adams. Devontae Adams, it was a garbage touchdown, I would say, at the very end. He was out with an injury, came back. Very surprised that he pulled that in, but it helped a lot of your fantasy lineups because I'm pretty sure everyone started him. You also had Mixon and Tank Dell, who both performed. Tank Dell, no touchdown, but he really put that ball away. He had 126 receiving yards, 6 receptions on 9 targets. No touchdown again, but he kind of redeemed himself because from what we expected, at least something happened there. On the flip side, we did talk about C.J. Stroud just not being that guy you wanted, and Dalton Schultz also did not perform in a matchup where they needed a strong offense. And lastly, you had Breece Hall, who also did not do anything at all. Breece Hall ended up with 15 carries for 74 yards. He got you 10 points, and depending on your league, he was in 76% of snaps, but you really needed more from him because he's been slow. He's got his on and off weeks, but for the majority of the season, he's been a little bit slow. He's that hit or miss right now kind of guy.
See, I don't know if I fully agree with you on the Devontae Adams garbage time. I mean, it was a very close game at that point, and they needed a touchdown to really kind of seal it. I think that was very relevant, and I think Devontae Adams will be a obviously lock going forward. I think this is kind of his welcome to New York moment.
Garbage time wasn't the right wording I used. I didn't mean garbage time. It kind of was more just a surprising, hey, I thought he was out for the rest of the game. He comes back. What was it? First or second target when he came back was a touchdown. So it was really just kind of like, wow.
Yeah,
I did not deserve those points, but I got them.
But yeah, it's one of those like, oh, that's a blissful moment right there. You're right. I agree with that. But it was definitely a lackluster game. But it was good to see Rodgers kind of come back. And again, we already talked about Houston being a little bit disappointing. But let's move on to a completely disappointing game here. And that is completely New Orleans Saints versus Carolina. There is really not much to say here. Your highs, the guys who actually boomed for you, are Hubbard, Kamara, and shockingly, like Jake Sanders, the New Orleans tight end. I mean, I would never have played him because there's like 4 tight ends you want to play in New Orleans that could go off at any given point. And Xavier Legette had a good game, but he also got hurt. Honestly, I think all these guys, except for Kamara and Hubbard, the only reason they were relevant is because it was against another bottom feeder team. Everyone else was bad. Carr didn't look good.
Taysom Hill did perform. Taysom Hill
But
got a touch.
Taysom Hill did perform, but like he has his 4 games where he's relevant every year. Are you going to really take
Right.
the shot? You're not
Right.
going to take the shot randomly. And this was one of the games he won. So Derek Carr, Bryce Young, they still look awful. Jalen Coker, he's an interesting rookie I want to hold on to in Dynasty because I think there's a shot, but he's not going to help you in your lineup
Not this
year.
No.
Yeah, unfortunately. But moving
I
on.
agree. Definitely a garbage game. This was actually the only underdog victory win this entire week 9. Everyone else who won were the favorites.
Really?
Yep.
Did not know that.
Wow.
I did.
That's a cool fact. Man. Next matchup we had divisional game Washington versus New York Giants. Oh man. So what's a bummer about this is it's just Giants fans are just gonna watch Jaden Daniels beat us up for the next 10 years because that guy's freaking awesome. Then Terry McLaurin, he had I think 2 receptions, 19 yards, but 2 touchdowns. So I mean, it was 15.5 fantasy points, I believe. He had another great week. His touchdowns are really his savior because he has like 2. He's not like on the other side of the ball. You had Neighbors who had 9 receptions. You have McLaurin who puts up very low receptions, but he gets touchdowns and yards. Then you also had Austin Eckler. He got a touchdown. He had a pretty decent week. And another Giants guy, you've got Daniel Jones. He surprisingly had 2 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. Had a really awesome fantasy week.
I think again we kind of talked about it. I think the capability of having an actual running back there really opened it up for Daniel Jones to move his legs.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely fair. He runs better when there's another running threat.
So, want to know what surprised me about this game? Terry McLaurin has been a great fantasy asset this year, but like I saw he got in the end zone twice. I was like, oh, this is awesome. He's got a great game again. And I just traded for him with
yards.
you, Tyler.
19 yards,
19 yards and 2 receptions. They were just both touchdowns. Like I was like
scary.
It was
and this
actually
is not a thing. This is not uncommon for him and Jaden Daniels. It seems it seems like his floor is 2 to 3 receptions, but it seems like Terry McLaurin's ceiling is like 5 or 6 receptions a game. But he gets a lot of targets, but he does get. He's been getting touchdowns. So
yeah. Moving on to Buffalo versus Miami. Some of the highs we had: the boom candidates, Josh Allen, Ray Davis. Surprisingly, continues to be fantasy. I mean, he's got a couple weeks where he performed fantasy. Where he's been fantasy relevant, but definitely a guy to look out to. Tyler Bass, game-winning field goal, and Devon Achane with Tua back. Devon Achane just absolutely explodes. 12 carries, 63 yards, 8 receptions, 58 yards, and a touchdown receiving and rushing. He is cooking with Tua back. On the flip side, though, Tua probably didn't perform where you wanted him. Neither did Raheem Mostert, James Cook, and Keon Coleman. None of them were really winning you fantasy weeks, so disappointments there.
Yeah, I mean, my God, it's just been like watching Achane has just been amazing because the talent is so there, the speed is so there. He's such a great fantasy asset. I'm just so afraid of having him on my team, which I don't because he's just so injury prone. But Tyler, I know you got him in a couple leagues, and good for you because he's gonna win you. He's gonna win you weeks and possibly a championship. Yeah. Moving on to the next game, though, Chargers and Cleveland. I mean, what more to say here? Like, let's keep it on the highs, right? Tillman, that's pretty much all you want to say from Cleveland, but I love the kid, and I think he's going to be around for the future as well. On the other side, Herbert, Dobbins, even Johnston, man. Like, Quentin Johnston, like, came out of kind of nowhere, but you know what? He's been looking pretty good. He's getting open down the field, and now that Herbert's throwing the ball, this might be something you actually have to start playing Johnston for. But there were downs on this game, right? McConkey definitely felt the after effects of Johnston coming back. So
especially after last week. I really thought he was going to do much better.
yeah, I don't think Herbert's going to be able to throw the ball enough in this offense to support two fantasy relevant players. And I think Johnston is running away with the number one spot. But other people who are down on this game, Njoku, I expected more. And Chubb, I really want to see more. He's getting the work.
Yeah.
He's not getting the efficiency. I don't blame him. I still think he's a great player. He's just not ready yet. That's just it. Like, you guess what? If you have Chubb, you're probably not going to get a whole lot out of him this year. If you have him in a dynasty, hold on to him. The value can only go up. And I do think the talent will be there next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, for the next matchup, we have New England versus Tennessee. This game really was about the running backs. So you have Ramondre Stevenson, who had 2 touchdowns, 1 passing, 1 rushing. Then Tony Pollard, he did not find the end zone, but he did have 28 carries for, I think, 128 yards. So just on sheer volume, you want him in your starting lineup because he's really the only good weapon they have. Now, for the quarterbacks, Mason Rudolph had an okay game, but Drake May, he went through some growing pains. He threw, I believe it was 2 interceptions.
He did, yeah.
So,
yeah,
not great
95
there.
on the ground, though. He rushed for almost 100 yards.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Absolutely. And then the other interesting thing from this game, Calvin Ridley came a little bit back down to earth. 5 receptions for 73 yards. Not bad, but it's not what his monster week 8 was. The only other really person that was fairly well involved, Hunter Henry. 7 receptions for 56 yards. Didn't find the end zone, but with how bad tight ends have been, he's definitely a serviceable game.
You know what? I saw it the other day. He's a top 10 tight end.
Yeah.
Hunter Henry.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just
he's been
He's
more
also
consistent.
their emergency quarterback. If Jacoby
Yes, he
Brissett
is.
and Drake May get hurt, it's Hunter Henry, who has never played a snap at quarterback, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to, we have the Dallas Cowboys versus Atlanta Falcons game, if you would even call it that. We had, on the Falcons side, we had Bijan Robinson. Darnell Mooney is continuing to be a monster pick. If you have him, he just absolutely is killing it as a wide receiver. Definitely a guy that you wouldn't expect it from.
I tried trading for him in week 2 because I actually saw this coming because he's utilized everywhere.
Yep. You also had Rico Dowdle, CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, who did perform at least mildly. On the flip side, Dak, we talked about his injury, definitely didn't perform. And Kyle Pitts didn't really do much. But overall, the game with Dak out, Cooper Rush taken over, I guess you could say it was close, but not really. Overall, meh game.
Definitely a meh game.
Meh.
Kyle Pitts kills me because you actually can see the athleticism in his game.
I know.
You can see, he had a nice spin move to get around somebody and get an extra 4 yards in one of his catches. And he's just not consistent, doesn't get the ball enough. I wonder if he's a locker room drama. Have you guys heard anything about that?
I haven't.
No,
I
don't know.
not.
I'm thinking he might be, but all right, we'll go on to the next game. And I love covering this team. Oh, I'm so happy that I just see this. I love me some Cincinnati Bengals, man. I mean, can you imagine how good Joe Burrow must be if you have him on your team? I can, because I have him all over the place. 5 touchdowns this past week. Amazing. Of course, it was kind of shocking, though, that none of them seemed to go to Jamar Chase.
Nope.
Which was very strange. I mean, he was very involved in the offense, got a bunch of targets. I mean, what Jamar Chase ended up going for 11 targets, 7 receptions, but it didn't really amount to much more after that. They all kind of went to just random players on the team. I mean, Gesicki was the guy who really benefited, and Chase Brown. Chase Brown really benefited from his opportunity without Zach Moss. Yeah. But then the Vegas Raiders, honestly, you're only playing Brock Bowers and maybe you're flexing Myers. I mean, Myers had a pretty good week, but it's based on volume. And you know what? 8 for 11. He had 11 targets. Maybe he's someone you really got to start playing more. 105 yards. He might be getting He might be getting an uptick in my head, just seeing that now. Because, when they trade away Devontae Adams, someone has to get those targets, and it's clearly him.
Man. Moving on to the next matchup, we've got Denver versus Baltimore. What a game this was for Baltimore. You have Lamar. He threw 3 touchdowns. He had an awesome day. You had Derrick Henry caught one and rushed for 1. And then you had Zay Flowers, 5 receptions, 2 touchdowns, 127 yards. Just really killing it. On the other side, Courtland Sutton, he showed up big time. From someone who's literally had no catches in the game, he was kind of a big surprise. 7 receptions for 122 yards. And then Bo Nix did not pass for a touchdown, but he did catch one. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was definitely a Baltimore-heavy game. I thought this was going to be closer, but it didn't end up being as close as I originally anticipated. So moving on to the Bears and the Arizona Cardinals. The highs on this game, every single freaking Cardinal running back. I mean, James Conner, 18 for 107. Amari DiMarcado, 4 for 59 and a touchdown on the ground, and 2 for 21 through the air. Trey Benson, 8 for 37, and might be his first touchdown of his rookie season.
I believe it is, right?
Also, 1 reception for 18 yards. Yeah, I think it is as well. You also had... That was really Kyler Murray definitely disappointed you this week. He was really kind of under-relevant.
And Marvin Harrison Jr.
That's true. And Marvin Harrison Jr. You're right. Those are both lows. Trey McBride did get a rushing touchdown, believe it or not, and he was 3 for 35, so definitely was a high. No one on the Chicago team really did anything for you. And Marvin Harrison Jr., Kyler, Caleb, all of Chicago, pretty much useless.
Yeah, outside of Swift, they really didn't have a whole lot.
Even Swift.
Swift, actually, I liked his usage still, but You're right. I mean, he didn't have a great stellar game. He didn't get a touchdown, but he still saw 16 carries and saw 6 receptions. So that's what I really like seeing. He's still very involved. But you're right. It was just a down game for Chicago, and Arizona's defense might be stepping it up here. That's something to note of and look forward to. Moving on to the next game, Jacksonville and the Eagles. Really here... Who are your highs? Oh, yeah, we already kind of talked about him. Jalen Hurts dominated again. But here you're playing him. He's a lock in no matter what. Same with Saquon Barkley. Devontae Smith went off with the loss of A.J. Brown, which was great to see. And on the other side, really, Evan Engram was the only one who really benefited from Jacksonville. I mean, and you expected them to really throw the ball a lot more. Trevor Lawrence did not look good, even to Brian Thomas Jr., who... I have him in the lows category, Brian Thomas Jr. It's probably unfair given the fact that he is coming off of an injury, but I do have him in the lows because you expect more when you see him in the lineup because he's one of those phenomenal rookies. But outside of him, it's Tank Bigsby and Trevor Lawrence, man. Those two are the ones that you'd only play, but they brought your team down this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to the next matchup, though. We got LA Rams taking on Seattle. Now, we already talked a little bit about Seattle and how great JSN has been. But then Gino, he also had a pretty good game. He did throw for 3 touchdowns, but he also threw for 3 interceptions. Not great there. Now, on the other side, you got Matt Stafford, who threw for 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Puka got ejected, which led to Cooper Kupp getting 11 receptions. I think 114
out of there.
Wow.
Wow. Such a dad
I thought that myself right now.
Did you all by yourself?
This is a sarcastic laugh.
I hear it seriously.
Man.
It's right there.
So, yeah, it's interesting. It really seems like the passing attack is back for LA Rams. You did have DeMarcus Robinson step up a little bit and get his 2 touchdowns.
Do you think that sticks?
I don't think that sticks, especially with Puka coming back. He got ejected. He had to throw it to someone. And it was surprising it wasn't Cooper Kupp with his 11 interceptions, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think it sticks either. I think Cooper Kupp just drew all the defense over to him and Kyron and basically just left him open. I don't think it's something you can go into in the future.
No.
All right, moving on to the Detroit Lions versus the Green Bay Packers. This was considered America's game of the week. And boy, did I agree. Even though it wasn't a high-scoring game, 24-14 Lions, this was really an exciting game to watch. You've got the highs pretty much not too many on the high side. You did have David Montgomery, who did average, Jahmyr Gibbs. They're both pretty much putting up the same exact fantasy points every week. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's still consistent. He is getting you over 10 points nearly every week. You still want a little bit more, but that is all right. From the Green Bay Packers side, you really didn't have anyone to surprise you. No highs. The only high was maybe Jalen Reed with his 100 and Jaden Reed, I'm sorry, 5 receptions for 113 yards, but everyone else from the wide receiving core did not do anything. Kraft, Dobbs, Watson, they were all pretty much useless. The only person of fantasy relevance this game was Josh Jacobs. Even Jordan Love, he did okay, but he wasn't that
Jordan Love had a
quarterback.
bad game.
He had under 10 points. He had no touchdowns. He had 273 passing yards, which is formidable, but he had no rushing yards. I think that ankle still bothered him, but overall, though, fantasy-wise, this stunk. But
this
watching
a weird
wise,
game.
This was great.
It was a great game to watch, and you're right, it was a bad, weird game for fantasy because no one really popped. Even Amon-Ra St. Brown was probably the biggest pop of the game, right? And he had a touchdown, but barely 60 yards or something like that. So it was a rushing game, but no one popped, but everyone was somehow playable, which was interesting. All right, the other game here, Sunday Night Football, right? Indianapolis versus Minnesota. I thought this was going to be great, and it
sucked.
Kind of sucked, yeah. It kind of sucked.
There was no score at the end of the first period, and one defensive touchdown for the Colts at the end of the first half.
I don't know what I expected out of this. Sam Darnold to me blows my mind because it's like I expect him to either step up and be great or just go back to being your old self. And he's sitting in that mediocrity lane. And I just don't know what to think of it. I mean, Justin Jefferson is like your lock. Aaron Jones is a lock. Downs is actually getting to be a lock now that Flacco's in. But like outside of this, the biggest thing I got out of this was like the defenses were both great.
Yeah.
Outside of that, like Jonathan Taylor didn't show up. Flacco didn't show up. Hawkinson, I don't want to be mean about Hawkinson. He just came back.
Yeah,
so like
give him a little time.
No, he's going to be fine. It's just like you expected more out of him. And I don't know why I did because I don't believe in that. But first game back from injury, I still believe don't play him. I happen to say I thought he'd do better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Jordan, finishes off with our Monday Night Football game.
This was a great match. Ended up going into overtime. Interesting, let's talk about these quarterbacks. 5 touchdowns thrown throughout the game, 0 interceptions. Mahomes threw for 3 and Baker threw for 2. Both are, Baker is proving that even without his top 2 receivers, he is still a serviceable fantasy quarterback, which is awesome.
Yes.
Is Mahomes back?
I think Mahomes is going to be great. Yes.
I think
do
Mahomes
believe
is back with D-Hop.
You know what? I take that back. I'm sorry. I take that back. I was thinking about this earlier. I don't know why I reacted so quickly to your saying that. I don't think he will because he's proven that he's proven that he doesn't need to be.
Yeah, and you know what, Jordan? He's got a tough matchups. He's got Denver this week, who's good, great defense. Chargers week 14, Cleveland 15, Pittsburgh 17, and Denver 18. They don't have easy road ahead.
I think Hopkins is back. I guess that's where my head's at. I think Hopkins is truly going to be great. I don't think it's going to translate to Pat Mahomes. But what I will say this, I want to throw this out. I know we're fantasy football, we're families football oriented, but it's such a shame that Baker Mayfield is not going to get MVP consideration because his team is not doing well enough.
Yeah.
But he really is the driving force of this team, and he's making them relevant. He has been so good for this team that I wish that he got more consideration for the award that I believe he deserves.
I agree. He has shown up. He kind of got really screwed from the Browns when they got rid of him for Deshaun Watson. Then he went to the Panthers for a short time, the Rams a short time, and he landed here and he found a home, and it's great to see him perform at a high caliber level as he was expected to.
In an NFL,
in the NFL, it's great to see an offensive coach and a head coach actually utilize him the way he needs to play. the other teams, they weren't utilizing them the way that they needed to, and I think it's great. I agree with you. But that was
I'm sorry. I don't want to.
Bro,
I want to.
God,
Bro, yeah,
you
point.
guys totally skipped over me.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, you gonna let me finish my part? Thanks.
No,
So,
hurry up.
You've talked more than me during. Okay, so moving on to the receiving portion, you've got Kate Otten, who's proving again that he deserves to definitely be a must start, and he got another touchdown. You've got Kelsey, who on the other side, he got 14 receptions for 100 yards, which is awesome. We already talked about how Hopkins got the 2 touchdowns, and then Rachaad White, he got a rushing touchdown, even though he only had 3 carries and 19 yards. I lost because of that freaking touchdown. Was so mad. Oh my god! But yeah, that tops it off for Monday Night Football.
No, I'm sorry. Wait, are we worried about Worthy?
He's a rookie
from a redraft, yeah. But other than that, no.
I'm seeing a lot of signs that I do not like him, and I think
the rest
he
of
might
this
be a
season,
trade
I'm
away
worried.
guy. I think he's just he's not ready. I'll say that at very minimum, he's not ready.
I agree. All right, is that it? We're good now, right?
We are good now. You are approved.
Okay, that was our Week 9 highs and lows. Moving on to Duel of the Fools, our Week 9 results. Starting out, Geno Smith, Kyler Murray. Geno came ahead. Ramondre Stevenson, Nick Chubb. Those touchdowns helped. Ramondre got the win there. Did not play for Brian Robinson, so discounting that second RB matchup. We had Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry. Of course, King Henry went ahead and won that battle. Calvin Ridley, our first wide receiver showdown. Calvin Ridley and Josh Downs. Josh Downs won, but it was really pathetic by how much. It was only a few points at max. It wasn't, anywhere near a blowout like you would have expected on either side.
Tyler, you actually did this one, and I had to double check it because I'm like, there's no way.
Right.
Calvin, there's no way.
Right. You had A.J. Brown against Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase pulled ahead with that A.J. Brown injury. DJ Moore, who continues to be underwhelming. Jalen Waddle pulled ahead, but again, it was like
this one was another one. It was another one. I had to check it. I'm like, there's no way.
Yeah. And our last tight end matchup, we had Evan Ingram and Travis Kelce, and Travis Kelce pulled ahead. But again, I think this one was even close. I don't think Kelce did much.
No, he did a lot.
All.
He did a lot.
He did 14
yards.
14. If you just listen to my Monday Night Football recap, I mentioned he had 14 receptions for 100 yards.
I just want to point out how ridiculous it was that Waddle actually won against DJ Moore because he had 2 receptions for -4 yards. -4.
Oh, God.
He won with a touchdown.
I know. It's ridiculous. Dude, remember when Kyle Pitts won our Duel of the Fools with 0 points?
Yes, I remember that because I chose the other guy.
Nothing will beat that.
But anyway, that was... Oh, I'm sorry. I got to recap where we are. I took the week with 5 correct guesses. Mike and Jordan
You didn't have to recap
4.
that.
I did. Right now, the leaderboard. I have the most guesses, 1 at 35. Jordan's in second, 34. Mike is obviously in last with 29. You are incredibly bad at this.
I'm getting better.
Weeks 1, Jordan is in the lead with 5. I'm in second with 4, and Mike is again in last with 2. That about does it for episode 44 of the Fantasy Fools podcast. Thanks for listening. Wait for our next episode where we're going to dive into Week 10 matchups and try and give you some insight into who those starts and assists are for this coming week. See you later, fools. Give us a like, follow, and subscribe.